The first sighting was subtle, almost innocuous, just a few strange, moving objects on the edge of the solar system. By the time Earth's astronomers had fully detected them, it was already too late to hide the truth. These weren't asteroids, nor comets, nor anything they had seen before. They were ships, massive ships, heading directly for Earth. Within hours, the images were all over the news, broadcast in every corner of the globe. The fleet's size was incomprehensible. The first wave of ships alone seemed larger than Earth's entire moon. News anchors were in a frenzy, trying to fill airspace with speculation. The aliens weren't just here, they were coming with force. People's eyes were glued to their screens, unable to look away from the slow but inevitable approach of the unknown. As military experts tried to assess the situation, global governments struggled to issue a unified response. Panic gripped nations. The President of the United States, along with world leaders, was swiftly ushered into emergency meetings. Communications channels were encrypted. Information was rushed out, though nothing was known for sure. Every attempt to establish contact with the ships failed. In a sealed bunker deep beneath the White House, military strategists gathered with the world's most advanced scientists. Their eyes stared at the digital display in front of them. The alien fleet, in formation. It was unnerving. The sheer scale of it was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. "It's like nothing we've ever seen," one of the scientists muttered under his breath. They're preparing for something. Are they preparing for war? The general asked, his voice tight with fear. His hands clenched the table. The prospect of conflict, the loss of human life, was almost too much to bear. The moon landing, the space stations, human ventures into the cosmos, all of it had prepared humanity to reach for the stars. But nothing had prepared them for this. Across the globe, a wave of disbelief spread through the population. People had watched sci-fi movies, read about alien invasions in books, but this was different. There was no army to fight back, no heroic figure to rise up and save the day. The military might of Earth was nothing compared to this. No technology on Earth could match the advanced weaponry the aliens might possess. The defense systems in place around Earth were entirely insufficient for the threat that loomed overhead. The world's governments issued various statements, but the truth was clear. They were powerless. And then, as if to hammer home the point, the alien ships made their first move. No battle cries, no declarations of war. Only a simple, disembodied voice echoed through every communication channel, crackling across televisions, radios, and the internet. Your planet has been marked for destruction. You have 72 hours to surrender. The message sent a chill down humanity's spine. There was no explanation, no reasoning, no attempt to open negotiations. It was as though Earth's fate had already been decided for them. And as the voice faded out, replaced by a steady silence, humanity was left in stunned fear, staring at their screens, wondering, who were they, and what did they want? In the days that followed, the world descended into chaos. Some cities were locked down. Others erupted into panic. People took to the streets, questioning their governments, questioning their futures. Those who had watched the spectacle with awe now turned to fear. What could Earth possibly offer to prevent this destruction? What could any species, human or otherwise, do to stop a force like this? And yet, in the face of such overwhelming power, one truth lingered. There had to be something Earth could do to survive, or at the very least, something worth fighting for. As the countdown continued, humanity stood at the edge of a precipice. The unknown alien armada loomed above, and every passing second felt like the last. The question now wasn't if they would survive, but how. In the days following the arrival of the alien fleet, Earth's leaders had been scrambling. The overwhelming nature of the invasion had shaken the world to its core. Every nation, every government, scrambled to put together a united defense, but the sheer scale of the alien fleet left them questioning whether humanity even stood a chance. General Hayes, head of the newly formed Earth Defense Council, knew that humanity was outmatched. The alien ships, sleek and towering, hovered just outside Earth's orbit, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. What's worse, no communication had come from them. No attempts at diplomacy, no warnings or demands. They were simply there, a looming presence that threatened to destroy everything. The military forces of the world prepared for a fight they didn't believe they could win, and as the days passed, fear set in. That was when something unexpected happened. It started as a small team of scientists working on the moon. Dr. Lisa Newman, a leading physicist, had been conducting research on the ancient lunar base. She discovered something buried beneath the surface, a massive energy weapon, long thought to be a relic of an ancient Earth defense project. The weapon, capable of focusing an immense amount of energy, had never been fully activated, but with the right adjustments, it could potentially be used to strike back at the alien fleet. Newman brought her findings to General Hayes, who had already ordered multiple strategies to be drafted. "General," she said, her voice filled with urgency, "this weapon, it's humanity's last chance. If we can get it operational, we may have one shot at striking them. But there's no room for error. This is our Hail Mary." Hayes didn't hesitate. "Do whatever it takes, Doctor. We need to make a stand. And we need it now." While Newman worked with her team on the moon, a skeleton crew of soldiers and engineers began retrofitting the superweapon with whatever advanced technology humanity had managed to scavenge from the downed alien crafts. The superweapon's primary power source came from Earth's lunar resources, but the weapon had been dormant for centuries. Now, humanity's best minds were racing against time to bring it to life. Back on Earth, the public didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. Fear and uncertainty were becoming palpable in every city. Military personnel from across the globe had begun organizing in joint forces, but none of their weapons stood any real chance against the aliens' formidable defenses. The alien ships, vast, hovering, and silent, showed no signs of aggression yet. They simply loomed, as if waiting. Then something shifted. A strange hum vibrated through the atmosphere as the superweapon on the moon powered up. It was humanity's final chance. A risky move, one they had no guarantee would succeed. But General Hayes, standing in a dimly lit command center, understood one critical truth. Humanity's survival depended on it. "Fire when ready," Hayes ordered, his voice steady, but laced with an edge of anticipation. Dr. Newman, her hand hovering over the console, turned to the scientists around her. "This is it," she said softly, before inputting the final sequence. The weapon's massive energy core hummed to life, sending an immense pulse of energy directly toward the alien fleet. The power surged through the moon base, and for a split second, everything felt surreal. The beam, bright and pure, shot from the moon's surface toward the heart of the alien armée. It wasn't just a shot, it was humanity's declaration. It was a message to the invaders: we will not go quietly. The beam struck one of the alien command ships with blinding intensity. There was a deafening silence for a moment, before the explosion rippled across space. The alien ship shattered into pieces, and the shockwave of the impact caused a ripple effect through their fleet. It was a blow unlike anything the aliens had anticipated. The moment the beam connected, Earth's military leaders looked on in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. One of the alien command ships was gone, destroyed in a single shot. But it wasn't enough. The destruction of the command ship sent a shockwave throughout the alien fleet, throwing them into disarray. And yet, the rest of the fleet remained intact, seemingly unaffected in the grand scheme of things. General Hayes, watching the aftermath unfold on the screens, knew the war wasn't over. This wasn't a victory. It was a signal. Humanity had just delivered a warning shot. And now, the aliens would respond. Across the world, every person watched as the message went out. The world had just sent its first strike in an intergalactic war, and the message was clear. Earth was not going to surrender without a fight. The world held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The alien ships hung in orbit, silent and ominous, like giants casting long shadows over the world. The countdown clock was displayed on every screen across Earth, ticking down the final hours until humanity's fate would be decided. 65 hours. 64. Time was running out. Behind closed doors, Earth's leaders were engaged in frantic discussions. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a grim determination. Some countries advocated for surrender. After all, what hope did humanity have against such an advanced force? Others, especially in the military, urged for a show of force, even if it was hopeless. But the truth remained. Nothing Earth had could possibly match the technology or firepower of the alien fleet. In one of the securest locations on Earth, the Pentagon's war room had become the heart of desperate calculations. Every possible strategy was debated: diplomacy, psychological warfare, preemptive strikes. But all of them came to one brutal conclusion. If Earth was to survive, there was only one option left. General Connor Hayes, a grizzled military veteran, stood by a digital map of the solar system. His face was grim, his posture rigid. The silence in the room was broken only by the faint hum of computers. A young lieutenant tapped a few commands into the control panel. The image zoomed in on the moon, specifically, a large structure near the pole. A secret. This is our last chance, General Hayes said, voice tight. His hand hovered over the display, pointing at a large, complex structure that had been kept hidden from the public for years. We call it Project Artemis. It's a moon-based superweapon. It was designed as a last resort, and we never thought we'd have to use it, but a scientist standing nearby interjected. It's not tested. We don't even know if it will work, let alone if it can defeat an entire fleet. I know, Hayes said, his voice a low growl. But we don't have time for ifs anymore. We either use it or we die. The room fell into tense silence as everyone around him grappled with the implications. Humanity's fate rested on a weapon of unknown power and dubious reliability. They had one shot. If it failed, Earth would be defenseless. The superweapon was an enormous space cannon built into the moon's surface. The concept was simple: one powerful, concentrated blast capable of obliterating a massive target. But the challenges were overwhelming. The cannon had never been tested, and firing it might inadvertently trigger catastrophic consequences. And yet, the risks paled in comparison to the alternative. Outside the war room, the world was in chaos. The public, knowing only the bare minimum, was gripped by fear. Citizens packed into underground shelters, clinging to the hope that their governments had a plan. Military drills took place in every major city, but these were more symbolic than effective. Nothing could prepare them for the reality of what they were about to face. In the streets, people held their breath, knowing the final countdown had begun. Meanwhile, across the globe, another dark undercurrent began to stir. There were whispers of dissent, of people rejecting the idea of surrender, rallying for a fight no matter the cost. Humanity, despite its weaknesses, had always been resilient. Now, it was more apparent than ever that, for better or worse, Earth would make it stand. In the quiet of the war room, the final preparations began. The moon-based cannon was activated. The energy requirements to fire it were beyond what anyone had calculated. If the cannon worked, it would send a shockwave across the solar system. The soundless anticipation was deafening. "Prepare for the shot," General Hayes commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. The countdown had started. The clock was ticking down to zero, and this was humanity's last shot. Would it succeed, or would Earth fall beneath the shadow of the alien armada? The world waited, suspended in fear and hope. The countdown clock was now in the final minutes. With each passing second, the tension grew unbearable. Across Earth, billions of eyes were glued to their screens, watching as humanity's fate hung in the balance. The world's attention was focused on a single point in space: the moon. Inside the moon base, engineers and scientists scrambled, finalizing adjustments to the superweapon, codenamed Project Artemis. Every individual on the ground knew that this would be their defining moment. There was no second chance, no backup. The superweapon, still untested, was Earth's last line of defense against an unstoppable force. General Hayes paced back and forth in the control room, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression stone cold. Sweat beaded on his forehead. But his eyes never wavered from the massive screen in front of him, which displayed the alien fleet's location. The command center had gone silent, except for the faint hum of machinery. Every person in the room understood the gravity of this moment. 30 seconds, one of the technicians called out, their voice tight. The final numbers ticked down, second by second, until the countdown reached 0. For a moment, there was complete stillness. And then, without warning, the moon's superweapon fired. The energy beam erupted from the cannon, cutting through the darkness of space with a blinding flash. The power behind it was staggering, a single concentrated blast of energy that stretched across the vastness of space. It was the culmination of years of secret research and development, and now it was humanity's sole hope. The beam hurtled toward the closest alien capital ship, the largest in the fleet. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing would happen, just another futile gesture in the face of overwhelming might. But then, the unimaginable happened. The beam collided with the alien ship with an explosion of light and energy. A shockwave rippled outward, shaking the fabric of space itself. The alien vessel didn't explode in a fireball as expected. Instead, it trembled under the force, its shields flickering like a dying ember. The blast tore into its hull, sending debris spiraling into the vacuum of space. The ship listed, unable to recover from the devastating force of the shot. The rest of the alien fleet, which had been watching silently from a distance, immediately sprang into action. Panic rippled through their ranks as they scrambled to respond. Alien ships began firing wildly in all directions, attempting to regroup and retaliate. But the damage had already been done. A second alien ship, not far from the first, was caught in the blast's aftershock, its own shields buckling under the pressure. It, too, was sent careening off course, barely managing to avoid total destruction. The alien fleet, once an imposing armada, was thrown into chaos. The invaders had not expected this level of resistance. The humans had done the unthinkable, struck a blow against their seemingly invincible power. Back on Earth, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Around the globe, people erupted into cheers. From New York to Beijing, from Rio de Janeiro to Cape Town, humanity was united in an unexpected moment of triumph. The impossible had happened. Earth had fired a shot, and it had landed. For the first time since the alien fleet's arrival, hope bloomed in the hearts of every human on the planet. General Hayes stood silently in the control room, staring at the screen. His face was unreadable, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, a flicker of disbelief, perhaps. He had not expected success, certainly not on this scale. But now, the impossible had become possible. Earth had sent its message, and the universe would listen. "We've done it," one of the technicians whispered. The words were almost too much to believe. But Hayes didn't allow himself a moment of relief. He knew this was just the beginning. The aliens would retaliate. They had to. And Earth's resources were still limited. But for now, humanity had sent a clear message. We are not to be underestimated. The alien fleet, now shaken but not defeated, began to regroup. A low hum echoed from their command ship, a sound of furious energy building in the vacuum of space. The retaliation would come soon, and it would be swift. But humanity's warning shot had been heard. And with it, Earth had earned its place in the galactic conversation. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, humanity had shown it could fight back. And the aliens, those who had once believed Earth to be nothing more than an insignificant speck in the vast universe, now understood just how wrong they had been. The aftermath of the warning shot was a stunned silence that hung over Earth as if the world collectively held its breath, waiting for the inevitable retaliation. The shockwaves from the explosion could still be felt in the atmosphere, a sign that the power of Earth's shot had shaken the alien fleet. It was a message of defiance, but also one of vulnerability. Earth had delivered its blow, but now the aliens would respond, and no one knew just how severe that response would be. Within hours, the alien fleet began to mobilize. The silent ships that had once loomed in space now sprang to life, and for the first time, humanity saw the true scale of their technology. Weapons that had been previously concealed in the shadows of the ships began to glow with ominous energy. The power that radiated from their weapons systems made Earth's forces feel small in comparison. General Hayes, standing in front of the command table in the Pentagon, studied the live satellite feeds. The alien ships were beginning to position themselves around Earth's orbit, forming a tight blockade. The implications were clear. The aliens were ready to strike, and they weren't going to hold back. "We need to prepare for their counterattack," General Hayes said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. His mind raced through the possibilities. The superweapon on the moon had been their only hope, and though it had delivered a powerful blow, it wasn't a guaranteed victory. They couldn't rely on it again. It had taken too long to recharge, and had nearly drained the moon base's power reserves. A scientist at the table, Dr. Lisa Newman, spoke up. "General, they didn't just lose ships. They lost command ships. We hit them at the heart of their fleet. That's something they weren't expecting. They're disorganized, and their commanders are panicking. It's possible we've thrown them off balance for now." "Balance isn't going to win us this war, Dr. Newman," Hayes replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. "We need to keep pushing. If we give them a chance to regroup, we won't have another opportunity like this." As if on cue, a communication from one of the alien ships blinked onto the main screen. The alien commander's face, a cold, calculating expression framed by the alien technology, appeared. "This is your final warning. Surrender, and we will allow your species to live as servants. Resist, and we will cleanse your planet. You are nothing more than an insignificant speck in the universe. Do not waste your lives." The words were chilling, the tone absolute. There was no room for negotiation. The aliens were not here to negotiate, to understand, or even to explore. They had come with one purpose: to subjugate. The world held its breath again. The message was clear, and it rattled humanity to its core. The alien fleet had vastly superior firepower, technology beyond Earth's wildest imagination, and a cold, implacable attitude that seemed impossible to break. But then something unexpected happened. The human resistance, instead of crumbling under the weight of the alien threat, found strength in their unity. Across the globe, a wave of defiance surged. People in every corner of the world rallied. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, civilians, all pushing aside their differences in the face of this common enemy. The world, once fragmented, was now bound together by the singular desire to survive. A new strategy began to form. Humanity could not match the alien fleet in sheer power, but it had something the invaders hadn't anticipated: ingenuity, resourcefulness, and an unyielding will to fight. Humanity might not be able to wage an all-out war on the aliens, but it could strike in ways that were unexpected, unconventional. In a secret bunker deep underground, a team of engineers and military tacticians began work on their next move. They would not face the aliens head-on. Instead, they would use the terrain of Earth and the uncharted space between the planets to their advantage. Guerrilla tactics, subversive strikes, and technological ingenuity would be their weapons. The fight would be unorthodox, but it would be fought on humanity's terms. As the alien fleet began its preparation to fire on Earth, humanity's military forces, now empowered by this collective unity, launched a coordinated effort. Fighter jets, augmented with newly reverse-engineered alien technology, tore through the skies. Satellites, hacked by Earth's best engineers, began to disrupt the alien fleet's communications, causing momentary chaos within their ranks. The alien response was swift. Ships fired powerful beams, decimating some of the human aircraft, but many managed to dodge and retaliate with advanced weaponry. The battle was on, but it wasn't going to be a clean, easy fight. Humanity was playing a new kind of game, a fight of survival, not dominance. The battle raged on, and though it was far from a victory, the aliens found themselves facing something they hadn't anticipated. A species that would not simply bend and break. Earth wasn't going to surrender without one hell of a fight. And now, for the first time, the alien invaders understood that their conquest of Earth would not be as easy as they had imagined. Humanity had proven something critical. It was not to be underestimated. The battle raged on, an unpredictable and chaotic clash between two very different forces. The alien fleet, once poised to annihilate Earth, was now being met with fierce resistance. Humanity, using every tool at its disposal, advanced technology, guerrilla tactics, and sheer determination, had turned the tables in a way no one had ever expected. But the truth was inescapable. Earth was still outmatched, and the alien armada was only growing more furious by the hour. General Hayes stood in the command center, surrounded by a sea of tactical maps and screens, monitoring every move of the alien fleet and the human resistance, his brow furrowed as he scanned the data. Despite their best efforts, the balance of power was still heavily in favor of the invaders. Ships continued to fall, both human and alien, and casualties mounted on both sides. The price of survival was steep, but humanity was digging in for a fight that seemed increasingly hopeless. "General," a young officer called out, voice tight with concern, "the alien fleet is pulling back. They've retreated to a higher orbit. We're not sure what they're planning, but it looks like they're reconfiguring their ships, could be preparing for a final strike." Hayes clenched his jaw. The fleet's retreat was a brief respite, but it was also a warning. The aliens weren't finished yet. They were only regrouping, likely preparing their most devastating weapons for a decisive blow. "We need to make one final move," Hayes said, his voice firm. He turned to the gathered officers, each one focused on their own tasks. "It's time for the last resort. Earth won't survive if we don't act now." Dr. Lisa Newman stepped forward, holding a tablet with a detailed plan she had been working on for the past few days. "We've been analyzing the alien fleet's weaknesses. From the data we've gathered, their command ships are the key. If we can target and disable their command ship network, we might disrupt their coordination. Without it, their fleet will be less effective, and they'll be forced into disarray. We can cause chaos in their ranks and buy ourselves time to deal the final blow." Hayes studied the plan. It was bold, almost too bold, but desperation had made every possibility worth considering. "Do we have the firepower?" "Not alone," Newman admitted, "but with the weapons we've reverse-engineered from their technology, we may be able to launch a concentrated strike with the Moon's superweapon if we can lock onto the command ship's coordinates. The problem is, their fleet has gone dark. We can't track their movement." "We'll have to track them manually then," Hayes said, voice resolute. "We'll send everything we've got, every ship, every pilot. We take the fight to them." The plan was a long shot, a gamble with everything riding on a single attack. But the alien fleet's retreat offered a glimmer of hope. If Earth could destroy their command ships, the invaders would lose their cohesion. Without coordination, they would become disorganized, vulnerable. Within hours, a fleet of human fighters, augmented with alien technology, was scrambled into space. Thousands of ships prepared to converge on the alien command ships, all coordinated by a small, desperate team of military tacticians. They would have to move fast. If the alien fleet re-established its full strength before their strike, Earth would be doomed. As the human forces accelerated toward the alien fleet's position, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. The final moments of the countdown to either salvation or extinction had begun. The alien ships, though quiet, loomed ominously in the darkness of space. Their powerful shields and weaponry were unmatched, and the command ships, hidden behind an almost impenetrable defense network, were still the key to the entire operation. But the humans had an advantage. They knew where the aliens would be, and they were coming for them, with everything they had. In the final moments before the strike, Hayes stood at the helm of a command vessel, watching the visual feeds. The air was thick with tension as the final fleets of humanity approached the alien position. "We're almost there," Hayes muttered to himself. "Just a little longer." But as the countdown to the attack approached zero, a new fear gripped him. If the aliens had anticipated this move, if they had anticipated the use of their own technology against them, they might already be preparing a counteroffensive. The risk was too great. The final strike could either win the war or doom the entire human race. Just then, a sharp voice broke through the tense silence. "General, we're being locked onto. They're preparing for an ambush." The alien fleet had already set a trap, and humanity had fallen right into it. The attack was imminent. It would be a battle of desperation. Earth's survival rested on a single final strike. The question now wasn't whether humanity had the strength to survive. It was whether they had the courage to go through with it. The moment the alert sounded, the atmosphere in the command center became a battlefield of its own. Panic didn't set in. There was no time for that. The people in the room were trained for moments like this, but the stakes had never been higher. The alien fleet was ready for their ambush, and humanity's forces were headed straight for it. General Hayes, his face set in a grim line, didn't flinch. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. All ships, hold your formation. We're not backing down." His words were like a rallying cry, sharp and unwavering. His gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of the officers, the engineers, the pilots, all those who had placed their faith in him. Across Earth's forces, fighters, bombers, and every available vessel took evasive action, veering off course to avoid the trap that was being sprung. But it was too late to stop the alien counterattack. As soon as the ships scattered, the alien fleet unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The sudden surge of weapons fire from the massive armada cracked the silence of space with violent intensity. Explosions flashed in the void as humanity's fleet fought to avoid the barrage. On board one of the fighter jets, Captain Avery Monroe gritted her teeth as her ship rocked from the incoming fire. "They're locking onto us, trying to isolate our fighters," she shouted over the comms, her voice edged with urgency. She swerved the jet left, narrowly avoiding a beam that would have torn through the hull. Her hands gripped the controls with a near-painful intensity. "All units, stay in formation. We need to buy time for the superweapon." The alien ships, larger and more powerful, moved with chilling precision, their laser weapons cutting through the vastness of space with deadly intent. Their command ships, protected by an impenetrable defense grid, hovered in the heart of their fleet. But there was one problem. They underestimated the resolve of humanity. Though outgunned, humanity's forces were determined, and every ship fought with everything they had. In the war room, General Hayes stood at the head of the table, watching the chaos unfold on the screens. His heart raced, but he refused to let fear take hold. "They won't get away with this," he muttered to himself. "We've come too far." Dr. Lisa Newman, standing beside him, glanced up from her monitors. "General, the superweapons coordinates are locked. We've got one shot. We just need to keep them distracted for a few more minutes." "Do it," Hayes ordered without hesitation. He turned to the officer in charge of the fleet's final push. "We need to hit them hard. We're going to make sure their command ships stay off balance long enough for the moon cannon to fire." The battle intensified. Humanity's ships swarmed the alien fleet like hornets, launching everything they had, from missiles to laser blasts. The alien ships retaliated with lethal force, cutting down several human fighters in the blink of an eye. The air was thick with the screech of blaster fire, the boom of explosions, and the desperate radio chatter of pilots on the brink of collapse. Back on Earth, People crowded around their screens, eyes wide with fear and hope. The streets were silent, save for the distant rumble of military convoys, mobilizing for a defense in case the fight moved planetside. Every person on the planet had come to understand one truth. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of the species. On board the command vessel, Hayes took one last look at the battle unfolding. Status report. The fleet is holding, but we're taking significant casualties. We need more time, one of the officers replied, his voice strained. The superweapon on the moon was humanity's last card. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the embodiment of all the sacrifices, all the ingenuity that had brought humanity to this point. One shot could change the tide of the entire war, but everything depended on the alien fleet's reaction. And then, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, the countdown began. The final strike, humanity's last hope, was set in motion. The beam of energy from the moon's superweapon was ready to fire, but the alien fleet wasn't waiting. A final devastating wave of energy surged toward Earth's forces. It was clear they had no intention of sparing humanity. In those critical moments, Captain Monroe's voice rang through the comms. "This is it. I'm going in." Her jet, heavily damaged and running on fumes, broke formation and shot straight toward the heart of the alien fleet. She knew the risk. She knew it was a one-way mission. But in that moment, every fiber of her being told her that this was the sacrifice needed to ensure humanity's survival. "Captain!" "No," shouted her wingman, but she was already too far ahead. Monroe's final maneuver was nothing short of a death-defying feat. She crashed her fighter into an alien command ship, detonating an enormous explosion that ripped through the alien fleet's formation. The shockwave from the blast sent shockwaves through the surrounding ships, disorienting them just long enough for the superweapon to lock in its target. The cannon fired. Time seemed to slow as the beam of light shot toward the heart of the alien command ships. The final wave of humanity's defiance had been launched. The universe would soon find out if it was enough. The beam from the superweapon pierced the void of space like a comet of vengeance, a focused surge of energy aimed directly at the heart of the alien command fleet. For a brief moment, time seemed to stretch, the air thick with anticipation. It felt as though the entire universe was holding its breath, waiting for the outcome. Then, the unimaginable happened. The beam collided with the largest of the alien command ships in a flash of blinding white light. The explosion that followed was unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed, a catastrophic shockwave that rippled through the surrounding fleet. The alien ship, once a symbol of unchallenged might, shattered into 1,000 burning pieces, its disintegrating hull scattering like dust into the cold expanse of space. But it wasn't just the destruction of one ship, it was the collapse of the entire command structure. The alien fleet, once coordinated and ruthless, immediately descended into chaos. Ships no longer communicated with precision. Some of them, disoriented by the shockwave and confused by the sudden loss of their commanding force, fired on each other. Others began to retreat, their shields flickering in the wake of the superweapon's destructive power. "General, we did it." Dr. Newman's voice broke through the comms, her tone filled with disbelief and awe. "Their command ships are gone. The fleet is breaking apart." Hayes, who had been watching the destruction unfold on the command center's monitors, allowed himself a brief, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. The worst had not come to pass. The Earth had fought back, and against all odds, it had won the first battle. The alien ships that remained, now scattered and leaderless, were vulnerable. The coordinated strikes by humanity's remaining forces had kept the pressure on. And now, with the command ships disabled, Earth's forces began to press the attack. Human ships, augmented with alien technology, swarmed the remaining invaders. The fleet, although still formidable, lacked the precision and firepower it had once wielded with terrifying efficiency. Captain Avery Monroe's final act had given humanity the edge it needed. Her kamikaze strike on the alien flagship had been the catalyst that broke their command structure. She had sacrificed herself for a cause larger than any one individual. And in doing so, she had ensured Earth's survival. The tide of battle had turned, but it wasn't over yet. The alien fleet, now in disarray, began to retreat. But they didn't leave immediately. Instead, they fired a last-ditch volley toward Earth, hoping to inflict as much damage as possible in their final moments. Massive beams of energy shot through space, targeting Earth's cities and military installations. But humanity had learned from the last few days of relentless attacks. Earth's planetary defenses, now activated to their full potential, intercepted most of the shots. Anti-aircraft defenses fired in unison, and laser arrays mounted on orbital stations destroyed the alien projectiles before they could reach the surface. The final offensive by the invaders faltered. In a move that could only be described as desperate, the remaining alien ships attempted to flee the solar system. But Earth's military, empowered by the technologies they had reverse-engineered from the alien forces, gave chase. The battle was not yet won, but the aliens were on the run. For the first time since the alien fleet had arrived, the Earth began to breathe again. On the ground, the entire world watched in awe. In every major city, people gathered in the streets, looking up at the sky. Some cried in relief, others stood silently, their faces a mixture of disbelief and pride. The unity they had found in the face of extinction, the rallying cry that had brought humanity together, was now palpable. Earth had won a victory against impossible odds, and the hope that had once seemed like a fleeting dream had solidified into something more. The undeniable truth that humanity was not weak. General Hayes stood alone in the command center, staring at the stars through the massive windows that offered a view of the war-torn skies. His mind raced. There would be a time to mourn the fallen, to reflect on the lives lost. But for now, Earth had triumphed. He turned to Dr. Newman and the others. "We're not out of the woods yet, but this is a start." The alien fleet had retreated, but the war was far from over. The aliens would regroup, perhaps even return with greater numbers, but humanity had shown them something undeniable. Earth would fight back, and it would never surrender. And as the first rays of sunlight rose over Earth's horizon, casting light on a new era of unity and defiance, humanity had proven that even in the face of impossible odds, it was a force to be reckoned with. The invaders had underestimated Earth once, but they would never make that mistake again. The battle for Earth might have been won, but the war for survival had only just begun.